All right, Rangers, so we are working on the bench here, and so we next step is to work on the legs. So we got all 4 legs here, and I've got one that's finished. What we need to do now is cut a 5-degree bevel on the top, so it's 5 degrees in 2 directions. So we're going to come over here to the miter saw, and we're going to change this angle to 5 degrees. And on the back here, we also need to change this to 5 degrees. We'll lock that down. And so we've got 5 on the front and 5 on the back, so that's going to be a compound cut. That's why we have a compound miter saw to do the 2 different angles at once. And we are going to cut those. We're going to cut one side here. I take the line, I put the piece of wood right halfway over the gap and cut once, slide it over to the stop block and cut again so that all 4 legs are exactly the same length. All right, so now we put them all together and we put the high side of each of those in the middle to make sure that all legs are going to spread out 5 degrees each way. So make sure that's the high point. Double check the bottom to make sure that the high point's in the middle also, to make sure we didn't cut one of those wrong. All these end up being parallelograms. We want to make sure we don't make trapezoids out of the legs. Well, that's the next step. After I've got that done, the next thing I want to do is label all the legs. So I'm going to label them left front, left rear, right rear. So I do a LF, RF, RR, and LR. And then I put a circle in the middle just so I can help myself remember which ones stay to the inside. Like that. And then I want to have a joint between these two, between these two, and those two. So my mortises will go into each one of those corners. All right, now I'm going to take my template here and I am going to line up the angle edge with the angle edge of the top. And so where that mark is that I put for that joint, I'm going to line it up. That's going to be the outside edge. So I line up the outside edge of the template, top edge, so that it's parallel, and then I'm going to trace out where that mortise belongs. So now I flip it over this way. Now I 180 my template. Again, flush to the outside, flush to the top. And now I have markings for 2 of my mortises. All right, so now all 4 legs have 2 mortise marks for the upper mortises and for that mortise and tenon joint. And so now we can get ready to cut those, which will jump on the milling machine here next to us. All right, so we are going to be cutting these mortises with this milling machine. Now the milling machine was made, conceptually I guess for metal. And so you put metal in the vise and then you can use your X-axis, Y-axis, and Z-axis to cut, machine, drill, anything that you could do for a kind of conceptually metal project. So we're using it for wood, which is way under duty for what it's built for. But this old guy was made, I think, in early 40s, Jackson, Michigan. Bought it off Craigslist probably 10 years ago now, up in Newaggo or somewhere up there. I like to think of this guy, maybe one of the machines somebody had to buy during World War II to make parts to help us win the war. So I like to think of this as my World War II winner here. Anyway, it's kind of an old gem, but never had a guard up on the top, so we made a wood one for it so that if the belts did break, they wouldn't come off in your face. So we've got a Y-axis control here, kind of like the CNC machine, except rather than having the computer control it, we control it by hand. X-axis over here. This is a Z-axis that controls the knee, which they call that the knee that goes up and down. And we can also control the Z-axis with a spindle with this guy, which is pretty much mainly what we control. If you look at those have number graduations on them. And so one full turn goes around 0.2 or 200 thousandths. And so we can control how far deep we can measure how far deep we're going to cut by watching those numbers. And the side ones have graduations on them also. So we can be very precise with a milling machine. So that's going to be how we're going to cut these. So I'll get this set up and we'll walk through that. All right, so we have our marks on here for our where we want to cut the mortise. So that's on a slight angle. And so we are going to put those in here. And I want the angle to be parallel, or the mortise to be parallel with these ways. So I have these wedges that are cut on a 5-degree angle. And so that allows me to make my wood piece square in the vise, but yet be at 5-degree angle so I can cut a parallel cut, if that makes sense. And so I'm going to sandwich the leg in here in between these. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but right now, with the way the wedges are set up, the angle of the mortise is way over to the left. So if that's the case, I need to switch either the side I'm going to do or the wedges. So if I put this wedge on this side and this wedge on this side, now that mortise line that I made is parallel to the ways, and it's ready to go left and right in the X direction. So I'm going to lock that into the vise, make sure it's tight down on the vise, crank it in. Then I'm going to lower the Z axis down so it's close to my marks, and so I can dial in left and right, X and Y, and Z. And so in my Y axis, I'm going to look from this side and make sure that I am evenly spaced over top of my template marks. And then I'm going to turn the bit 90 degrees and I'm going to come to the far left edge so I know where to begin. Alright, so I'm at my beginning point for X and Y. So now what I'm going to do, I need to go down 2 times, and that'll be 0.4. Then I'm going to go down 1.5 times, and then 1.5 times, so that'll be 0.4, 0.3, 0.3, which gives us a total of 1 inch in depth. And so I'm going to go down 2 cranks, go to the one side, I'm going to come back, and then go back the other way. So it's 3 passes, and that's going to clean out our mortise. So I'll do that on time lapse so that it goes fast. All right, so now that one side's done, we're taking it out of the vise. Flip the wedges every other time. We got to flip the wedges over. So wedges go to this side, turn it to this other hole, other mortise. Square it up. Line up our Y-axis again. Line up our X-axis. And then again, 2 turns all the way this way, 1.5 turns that way, 1.5 turns back that way, and then pull it out. All right, so we've got both mortises cut. We have our CNC tenon, and so when you're putting a when you're putting a mortise and tenon joint together, the ideal fit is you can push it together with your hands. You don't need a hammer, but you also don't want it to fall out when you shake it. And so we'll push this in here like that. Get it down tight, and we shake it, and it doesn't fall out, and I didn't need a hammer or clamp to put it in. So that is the ideal mortise and tenon joint milling machine, CNC machine, and we'll do all 4 of these are on the top. Then we'll work on the bottom lower aprons next. Hey Rangers, me again. Just wanted to make one clarification or one misspoken word. Anyway, when I said that you turn the crank and it goes 200 thousandths, I really meant it goes 2/10. Every little mark on that thing is 100 thousandths, but there's like 200 of them as it goes around. So anyway, just to make sure you didn't understand me incorrectly, it's 2/10 one full turn around that little spindle for the Z axis. So yeah.